Wait for it, and we're live. Hey, all you crazy sci-fi and fantasy fans. It's time for your daily dose of shenanigans over here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. Just a couple of nerdy veterans and one chaos coordinator geeking out over our science fiction passions and fantastical fantasies. A place where magic is king, the sky is the limit, and space is the place. We are the podcast that puts the fun in dysfunction. So without further ado, first I got to say, Nick, I've been practicing this intro long enough. I think I'm ready to go back to doing tour guides again. We're walking, we're stopped. See, I got it.
You got to do the hand gestures. We're walking, we're stopped.
Absolutely.
To the left.
I did those when I was in
grad, right?
When I was a grad student, I did the tours at Valley Forge for my internship. And so we had to do that with the public. And that's when I realized the customer is not always right, because sometimes the customer's a moron.
Yeah.
I mean, I've told the story where I became a write-up in the Library of Congress somewhere where I got fired officially because I made some customer angry. Of course, they fired me the day after my internship ended just so they could make this guy feel better. We're given the tour of, I don't know if I told the story on this podcast, but I was given the tour of the house where Washington stayed the summer or the winter of Valley Forge. And we're telling everyone that everything is in there is either historic reproduction, was actually in the house, or is something that was in the house, but this isn't that specific one. It's from another house, right? And obviously we asked them, well, the one part that's we make on site, and asked them what it is. And the guy's like, the floors. Obviously, it's high traffic area. So I asked him why, thinking he's going to say that because you walk on it so much. And he goes, because they had nails. They didn't have nails back then. And without missing a beat, I opened my mouth and inserted my foot. And I said, so they glued Jesus to the cross? And he got really angry. Everyone laughed at him. And then he got home and he wrote his congressman, and they did a whole investigation about that mean J.R. Handley. So in the Library of Congress now, because it's part of the official congressional inquiry record, that mean Justin Handley got fired from Valley Forge the day after his internship ended. And so I'm immortal now. Yeah. That guy's a moron.
Infamous. Love it.
Yeah, they don't seem to understand the concept of 10 penny nails is because you could at one point in time literally get 10 of them for a penny.
Yeah,
that was what apprentice blacksmiths did. They were the ones stuck building the nails because you can't mess that up in theory. I'm sure someone did, and there's some blacksmith like rolling in his grave like, no, Johnny, he messed it up all the time. But anyway, that made me. I don't know how we went there. It's all your fault, Nick, for letting me get distracted.
Oh, it's always my fault.
Always your fault. All right. We could blame Stabby because she's not here, but then you might actually get stabbed again. And so I don't know if you're ready for that.
Cooking dinner and she's making fajitas, and I kind of like want my lower intestines intact while I consume those.
Yeah. Are you a fan of fajitas, Jason?
I love fajitas. They're great.
Outstanding. So this is the part where we make the show about you and you get to tell us who you are.
Well, yeah. So I'm Jason Lenox. I'm a comic book creator, and it's been quite a while since my last comic book came out in my Lords of the Cosmos series. And I'm back. So I'm out trying to find a bigger, better, newer, more diverse audience of new and old fans, and trying to just find a bigger audience for my book, which launches on September 10th, which is the day this should go live. So that's who I am.
Okay. And then because this is the Blasters and Blades podcast, we do have to do the religion question. So are you ready for this?
I'm ready. Hit me.
All right. Star Wars, Star Trek, or Firefly?
Firefly.
All right. Why do you like Firefly?
I like Firefly at this point because I've been left wanting more, and all the stuff that was made is all things that I like, even though it's very little. And I think that Star Trek and Star Wars have been bogged down by probably product that doesn't hold up to some of the older things that we really liked a lot when we were younger. So there's like a greater and greater percentage of stuff that I don't really find myself into in Star Trek and Star Wars. So a couple weeks ago, I saw Wrath of Khan at our local art house theater. It was about a month ago. And I'd forgotten just how awesome it was till I saw it. And I don't know that Star Trek can ever capture what it used to have in particular. So I'd say Firefly because it never let me down.
That's true. I don't even know if we have an art house theater. I've heard lots of people go to all these cool niche shows that are brought back at these art house theaters. I'm like, I got to find one of those. That sounds cool.
Yeah, I've got one about 10 minutes from my house. So I saw Wrath of Khan there the other week. It was great.
Nice. I should have planned better and bought a house near an art house theater, clearly.
Well, we didn't plan it, but it's there.
I mean, you could totally claim it. We won't tell.
Yeah.
All right. And because we're polytheistic here at the Blasters and Blades podcast, Game of Thrones, The Wheel of Time, or Chronicles of Narnia?
I'd say Chronicles of Narnia. I don't know that if I'm a big fan of any of those properties, but of all of them, I enjoyed Chronicles of Narnia as a kid, reading the books.
Okay.
And I did enjoy the movie that came out about 20 years ago or something like that. Game of
You
Thrones.
shut your lying mouth. It hasn't been that long.
Has it? Okay.
It has not.
It's been a minute.
It has been a couple years, but yeah, Wheel of Time, don't know anything about it. Game of Thrones, I saw a few episodes, seemed okay, and then I know that everyone hated the ending of it, and I just kind of steered clear.
Yeah. So what was your fantasy franchise of choice then?
Oh, Conan, for sure. Is that
Oh,
fantasy?
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
So-
that totally
What is-
counts. That used to be one of the original religion questions.
No,
Yeah,
it was always the three that we listed, except for instead of Chronicles of Narnia, it was Lord of the Rings. Conan is one of these substitute when they've been on the show more than once.
Yeah, no.
Oh yeah, okay.
The Conan comics, Savage Sword, the color comic from Marvel. I have all the paperbacks, the Robert E. Howards, and then kind of all the pastiches that came after that. No, so I would say Conan is probably my top fantasy property.
Okay. What is it about Conan that speaks to you?
There was always a level of authenticity with the Robert E. Howard stories, which I think speaks to how it's become so popular for almost 100 years, where there's just kind of an everyman having adventures with the fantastic. And he was friends with H.P. Lovecraft when he was alive, so there's always a little bit of that, elder gods touch in the background. But I like Conan the Everyman living in a fantastic world and having adventures that were somewhat relatable.
That is the cool thing about the other gods being part of the public domain now, with Lovecraft being old enough, because you're starting to see them come back in cool ways. Because now they don't have to worry about getting sued.
So I think that's a great point. One thing that I think is great is when things become public domain, because the public can do a great job of taking things like Dracula or H.P. Lovecraft. And I did see a thing the other day. Popeye will be in the public domain very soon.
Yep.
So I
But
do
not
think
olive oil.
when these things are allowed to be seen through the eyes of everybody, it revitalizes them. I think Lovecraft in particular has gone through a huge renaissance because anyone can make Lovecraft. If you want to make a comedy or, a horror or whatever it is you want to do, there's more awesome H.P. Lovecraft stuff now than ever. So, to me, the more that these things get unlocked to the public, the better.
Yeah, I like to see the rating. You got to be careful though, because sometimes not all of it is free at the same time. So like Popeye is going to be, but olive oil came a couple years later. Steamboat Willie is, but Mickey Mouse isn't. Like it's weird how it breaks.
Well, and look out, because I believe Wonder Woman, Batman, and Superman are close to becoming public domain as well.
Really?
Yeah, no, I saw a chart on social media. It was drawn like a staircase, and it had like Winnie the Pooh just became public domain recently, the older version. And what I was looking at was the future stuff, and it was like Popeye, and then it was like Wonder Woman, Batman, Superman in some order, and there were some other things that were actually pretty well known that are coming, things that have kind of been in the public thought for quite some time, and how that works. With your point with Steamboat Willie. Will the original version of Superman be public domain, but not the John Byrne one from the 80s? I don't really know, but I'm excited.
It'll be interesting to see what they do with it. I kind of liked what they did with the Winnie the Pooh with the blood and honey. I'm not a horror fan, but I just thought it was so over the top that I thought it was kind of cool that they were, taking it in a weird direction. And anything, how you could get a Winnie the Pooh freaking romance novel if you really wanted to. Because everything's possible now.
Yeah, and I saw a few people kind of complaining that they didn't like Blood and Honey, and that's really not my cup of tea. I wasn't interested in it, but that's the whole point. I don't have to be into all of it. I just think it's cool that whoever made that did what they wanted to do, and if it's not for me, that's okay. I look at some of these things we just talked about, Star Wars and Star Trek. I wonder how cool Star Trek or Star Wars would be as public domain properties. I know that Star Trek, a couple years ago, there was a really awesome fan film called Axanar.
I saw that. It was good.
That was a fan film that the studio cracked down on, and that was one of the best Star Trek things I'd seen in years. And I wonder what would those properties be like if there was a freedom to create. So maybe one of these days we'll see a public domain Star Trek when we're older. Who knows?
So the cool thing about the unfortunate thing is, if with IP, if you don't defend the property, you lose it. And so on the one hand, they kind of had to go after them,
Yes.
but they could have handled it more deftly. Like Star Wars doesn't go after people that make the Stormtrooper armor, and their argument legally, so they can get away with defending the IP, is they're not actually paying someone to produce the copyrighted Stormtrooper armor. They're paying them for their hour to make the costume. And so there are ways to parse that they could have not screwed their fans over.
So there was a guy or girl, I don't know who they are, but there was a 15-minute film called Astartes that I saw on YouTube, which was a fan-made Warhammer animation.
Oh, I saw that, black and white.
It was color. I mean, there was some color in it, but it was pretty dark, and it was so well received, and it was so popular that Games Workshop just hired the person that made it, and then they've, I guess, now said that it's canon because it was so good. And I think that's probably a smarter way to handle it, because I liked Astartes. It was pretty cool. I mean, it was appealing to me, and I've watched it a couple times. And, I'm not even really a Warhammer fan, but I just thought it was really well made. So, I kind of think they could have handled Axanar similar, because it seemed very well put together and well done, and actually kind of thoughtful from what I recall. But yeah, they kind of went after it pretty hard to protect their IP, which is their right. But I think, to your point, there's a better way to handle it.
And I get they had to go after it to protect the IP. They just, sure, if they had been more creative, they could have protected the IP and not pissed the fans off. Because what you end up with is, like, there are people that make their whole channel like reviewing content and reviewing games and stuff, and they review shows, and none of them would touch Star Trek stuff because they were afraid of getting the hammer, so they just didn't touch it at all. And essentially, you create a desert for fan-made content that would pimp your stuff.
Sure.
Which is, it's a lose-lose proposition as far as I'm concerned, because they don't make money if people don't pay.
Sure. And, as the years roll on and our hairs turn gray, right? The evolution of how these entertainment properties and their studios and owners interact with the fans keeps evolving.
Yes.
We're on StreamYard. We're going to be discussing this online and having, chats and views and things like that. It's a different way. I recall being a lad and seeing movie trailers. You would just go see a trailer and say, holy hell, there's a new Indiana Jones film, or there's this film called, E.T. or Gremlins or whatever. And they were just like surprises. And the only reviewers that I recall as a kid was Siskel and Ebert on PBS. Yeah. So, and they're really the only interaction might have been like a friend or two that you would just converse. And I remember buying magazines like Cinefex and CinemaScape and Starlog and Fangoria, and you would maybe you could write a letter. And that was pretty much it. That's decades ago now. But you have the ability for fans to create things, to broadcast them and make content, and then the ability for fans to rally support or express displeasure towards these properties. It's a radically different environment that we enjoy everything, whether it's comics, movies, books, etc. So,
yeah, that's one thing I don't like, is it, because the way the algorithms work, it kind of pushes the rage bait stuff. So only thing people talk about is what they hate. I'm like, can we just talk about the cool stuff? And then, if you don't like it, like, I won't yuck someone else's yum. So if it's your jam, fine. I just don't have to like it. We can move on. But like, just hating on everything, it's gotten a little toxic.
Yeah, it's so for me, I'm kind of like a light switch. So when I'm making comics, I'm not really out doing this, like promoting and marketing. So now that I have a completed product, I've kind of changed focus to put my energy towards, marketing and talking, to take the product out to the world. And I kind of go through periods where I ignore it. And the one thing that struck me in the last, I'd say about 6 weeks of kind of come back and seeing which podcasters and reviewers are still around, because a lot of them have gone away. They're not there forever, is that the public entertainment sphere seems very negative. And I think, what did you say? Rage bait.
Yeah.
It definitely is. And the one thing I did think about is it seems like there's so much, especially comic creators picking on each other. There's not a whole lot of that's really cool or I like that. It just seems to be a lot of infighting and picking. And I kind of found that generally depressing, because it wasn't how cool is this? It was just a lot of rage clicks or fighting with people. I don't know if it's real outrage or fake outrage or whatever, but it seemed incredibly negative. And, I just remember just being excited to see cool stuff when I was a kid. And even though I'm not a kid, I'm a kid at heart, but like, there didn't seem to be as much discourse about this is really cool, just kind of a lot of fighting. And that was actually the last couple of weeks, as I've kind of wandered back into the public square, so to speak. It's a little depressing, I would say.
Yeah, I don't know. That's why we try to, when we do movie reviews, if we absolutely hate things, we tend just we don't finish it, so we don't review it, because, life's too short to watch bad movies, read bad books, read bad comics. And if we didn't like it enough to finish it, is it really fair to review it? So we kind of moved past that, just because that's not the demographic we want. I mean, like, we reviewed the Ahsoka. Was it Ahsoka? How do you say that, Nick?
Ashoka. Yeah.
Yeah, we watched that one. But even that, like, there were parts we liked, even though, like, we thought some of the choreographing was horrible.
Sure.
And so I think there's a line between just hating everything about everything and just having legitimate, like, constructive criticism. I do think we also tend to get a little too thin-skinned in some respects, we being the general collective. So there's definitely a happy medium. But anyway, we didn't come to talk about all that nonsense. We're going to finish the religion question so we could talk about the Lord of the Cosmos. So one of the crying shames of growing up and getting older is people stop asking you the important questions. So we are bringing it back. So what's your favorite dinosaur?
So I just found a YouTube channel called Prehistoric Zoo. And one thing that I always thought was cool as a kid was all the big, they never seemed to get as much hype in the kids' books that I read as a kid. So I sat and watched a 45-minute video last week about whatever the inland sea was that would have been the middle of the United States, from like Texas up until like Canada. And there was a large predator, and I don't remember its name, maybe Mosasaurus, but it looked like a gigantic, not quite a crocodile, kind of like the thing in the one Jurassic Park that was living in the big lagoon. Something sort of like that seemed incredibly scary to me. And I think as a kid, I thought T-Rex was cool, but I think whatever that big underwater dinosaur is now, he's my favorite later in life, because it was really big, and underwater monsters have always scared me. And this idea that there was things that were 65 feet long, they could move fast in like the middle of an underwater version of Nebraska is pretty freaking cool and horrifying at the same time. They would hunt plesiosaurs, the ones that had the long neck and like the paddle legs. They would eat like great white sharks for snacks. So that's my favorite. And I don't even know the name, but a quick shout out.
Mosasaurus is actually it.
On YouTube. Really cool.
I'll get that in the show notes. I'll link to the YouTube channel, the Prehistoric Zoo, because that's kind of right up my jam anyway.
Yeah, it was just neat stuff. I mean, like, and they have weird stuff on there. I looked at a couple other videos. They had one about some era in the past that was like gigantic insects, like centipedes the size of cars, and it's just all generally horrific, terrible, fascinating stuff that you're glad isn't here today. Nick's ready.
All nightmare fuel.
Size of a car, right?
Yeah, nightmare fuel.
There's a cool show that I pimp all the time. It's called Primeval. Their take on all the cryptids and stuff is that it was time anomalies, that the actual dinosaurs and actual ancient animals are coming through. And one of the ones they did was actually about the Mosasaurus, because in ancient Egypt they revered the crocodile as like one of the forms of the god, some god or whatever. I'm not just totally up on Egyptian, so that was the whole point of this dinosaur came back, and it's used to them just feeding it, because the Egyptians would worship it, and it goes up there and they don't have food for it. It kind of goes on a rampage, which I thought was kind of cool. when it comes to the depiction of that particular creature. But anyway, we are civilized here at the Blasters and Blades podcast. We are no longer knuckle dragging troglodytes, ish. So, coffee or tea, and how do you take it?
So I like coffee. I'm having coffee right now, and my wife Crystal is kind enough to get some flavored creamers for the season. So there's some kind of peppermint spice, right, that I've grown to really like with my coffee. So normally I'm a black coffee drinker, but I'm enjoying the holiday season, right? And the holiday season is all year now. So, it's kind of these. I'm not into pumpkin spice, but I like peppermint spice. But she's always getting different ones, and I tend to like all of them. So
that's they make fun of us, but Stabby and I are total basic white girls when it comes to pumpkin spice because I love me a pumpkin spice latte.
But Stabby doesn't. She had me scouring Target today looking for peppermint mocha creamer.
That's easy. You can get that year round. Just buy the peppermint and the chocolate separate, and then mix it.
I know, but she wanted it mixed together.
For me, if I'm mixing the two, caramel mochas are better for my. Of course, they're like diabetes in a cup, so I can only have them like once every blue moon. But when I do, so what I started doing, Nick, since we're working on this whole weight loss thing, every time I hit a 25-pound goal where I drop another 25, I've given my permission to one day to splurge out on all the stuff that's horrible for me. So like when I get to 275, we're going to Long John Silver's, baby.
Oh, so JR, Nick, where do you guys live? In the real world, where do you live?
Oh, I'm in Hampton, Virginia.
I'm in San Diego, California.
Okay. So JR, do you have Sheets in Wawa near you?
We do have Wawa. We do not have Sheets. That's a little farther north.
Okay. Yeah. So Wawa really did a great thing where they would have, and I think Sheets has since copied them, where they have like a frozen like square with like 50 things you can put in your coffee.
Yeah.
Like every possible creamer. So, big tip of the cap to Wawa for bringing that concept to the world. And by the way, I've San Diego, wonderful place, Nick. I was there once as a teenager. I thought it was awesome.
It's a great city.
Yeah.
It's just expensive, and I can't afford to live here. I can't wait to move to Texas or Tennessee or Florida.
The funny thing is, because he lives there post 9/11, when he goes around taking pictures of all the buildings because he uses it for his comic book set there, all the cops kind of give him the side eye, like, what are you planning?
What are you doing there?
Oh, and then I pull my badge out. I'm like, it's cool, boys. I'm one of you. And they're like,
you should do that like with a Rent-A-Cop badge and just see what they do. Like, I work for Whacking Hut. I'm one of you.
Top flight security of the world, Craig. Top flight security of the world.
The sad thing is Whacking Hut, because I worked for them when I was going to grad school. I guarded a bank in the evening. And that was the owner, the founder, that was his actual last name. And he went through like West Point. Can you imagine that being your last name and going to West Point? Like your last name is Whacking Hut. That poor guy, he's tough. Like that's naming a boy Sue levels of they effed with him.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
So, all right. Well, now that we got that out of the way, we have all the important religion questions discussed. You are actually listed as a sponsor today because we love our Kickstarters and we try to support them wherever we can. So first, can you give us the basic synopsis of what Lords of the Cosmos is?
So Lords of the Cosmos takes the general theme of a 1980s inspired science fiction and fantasy world that is in some sort of post-apocalyptic state. And we, the readers, join it in issue 1 after there have been multiple wars and the heroes and the villains are kind of knocked down. And the comic chronicles the next war that they're getting into. And it's a world with magic. It's a world with robots. It's a world with technology, fantastic things, things that you can't understand. And there's a war on it. And each issue is kind of like a 2000 AD or heavy metal, where there's one main story that I draw and I co-write with the creators, Dennis and Jason Palmatier. And then each issue has side stories that branch out. It's all in black and white. So if you like things like 2000 AD or Heavy Metal Magazine, that's the format. And then the theme is 1980s inspired post-apocalyptic mayhem with overpowered villains and super-powered heroes fighting in what would appear to be one last final conflict.
Nice. So do you cover the back history of what the conflict, or you just sort of open the universe after it all happened?
It's a great question. So what the main story just is what we'll call the present, and then the side stories start running backwards into the past. Maybe they'll go into the future at some point, but things start becoming revealed through each issue. So in issue 3, one of the characters, who's a plant that lives inside a machine, like a mech, his origin story goes back 250,000 years to a time when there's plants that are involved in a global conflict against other plants on the planet. And then there's questions about where the plants even got their technology from before that. So yeah, I would describe it like a gigantic house that we're running around with flashlights and opening up cabinets and doors and like shining inside and finding out things and clues and tidbits. And all has not been revealed, but that's part of the fun. It's the kind of thing that I enjoyed as a reader when I was a kid, trying to like figure out what the hell is going on, and enjoying having strange things revealed to me as I read along. So that's how we're fleshing it out.
Nice.
I like that.
So it's pretty cool.
That is the universe. What can you tell us about the main character that we follow? Is there one main character throughout all 5 episodes or issues? Excuse me.
No. Each issue, the spotlight keeps shifting to different characters that are in focus. So issue 5, the main character is Zemba, who's the lady with the gun and the whip in the image. Like, she's kind of been a background character up until issue 5. In issue 5, the spotlight kind of shifts to her because she starts to get more involved with the main story. And then we go back and find out why she's gone completely off the rails in the main story with her own origin story, where we find out how her interactions with other villains were going on several years before the main story. So she was not a main character until this point, and now she is. And in the prior issue, the main character was a cannibalistic cyborg that she comes into conflict with in this issue. And then, back and back and back. But each issue, it's kind of been a rotating spotlight. So the next issue is going to spotlight on 2 other characters that have been around, but we haven't done a whole lot with, which is kind of part of the fun. It's not necessarily traditional. It may not be the most recommended way to tell a story, but it's just kind of the weird, funky stuff that we want to do with it.
I mean, doing things a little bit different can make you stand out. So that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sure. Is it just me, or does is there an unwritten rule that says post-apoc has to have at least one cannibal in it? Because I seem to see that as a theme.
I never really thought about that, but you can always have one. This character is a cannibal because he's been designed that way. So in issue 4, we see how one of the officers in the evil army, he gets cut in half. And some of the other villains think it's great to bring him back as a tank of acid with huge legs like a spider and claws, and he has to kill people to live. So then one of the things, he has to take his romantic interest and kill her and eat her to survive after he's been transformed. But before that, he looks kind of like a Roman soldier, right? So
it's morbid. I love
they do that as kind of a cruel joke because they don't like each other.
That's dark, but I like it. I don't know. Maybe I need to see a shrink again. Because
nah. Therapy's for suckers. Just bottle it up and drink booze and read dark, morbid stuff.
Nick, that doesn't sound like very good advice, not to be practiced at home by the listening audience.
They call it PTSD. We just call it spicy deja vu.
Spicy deja vu.
Right.
All right. So is there any plan at some point? Is there a central story going on that we're just viewing the parts of it as like a kaleidoscope until it centralizes on one issue where it all comes together? Or are they separate storylines just set in the same universe?
So it's all in a world called Aiden. And I like to think about how much I liked Eternia when I was a kid with He-Man. And it was always a place where anything could happen. There was magic, robots, whatever. And Eternia was always kind of a no-holds-barred, sandbox for the masters of the universe to fight. So the Lords of the Cosmos have Planet Aiden. And there's a kaleidoscope of conflict on it, but one of the first things that we came up with years ago when we started this project was where we thought the ending would go, and we're still cruising towards that ending. We just have to get a little more focused on getting to the end and stop getting excited to go down every weird alley that we see as we create. So there is an ending in mind, right? So we have an ending. That was always kind of the first part of our pitch internally between the three of us, and we're moving towards getting there. So there is an ending. There is an end to Planet Aiden, and hopefully people keep coming along with us to discover it with us.
Okay. Now, your role in the creation, you're the actual comic book artist, or are you the storyboard guy?
That's a great question. So when it started in 2016, it was Dennis Fallon, Jason Palmatier, and myself. I had a general idea, and I ran into Jason at my job, and I saw that he had a bunch of Robotech and comic book stuff at his house. And I said, would you want to work on this project? And he said, could we include my friend that used to live here locally, but he lives in Los Angeles now? And I said, sure. And we had a meeting, and we said, let's do it. And then their role was writers, and my role was artist. And it's been a couple years now. And as these books have ballooned and more people are involved, I still do the art of the main story, but I started doing writing, and I've done a lot of editing, and kind of been functioning as like an editor-in-chief of these books, which is to do something over any length of time with comic books, someone's got to be the captain of the ship, or else it will sink and stop, right? So even though I love to do art, I find more and more of my time on Lords of the Cosmos goes to all those other roles: editing, overseeing, management, etc. Even though for the most part, I wish I could just be a guy that draws, but such is life. If you want to be a comic book creator, you got to wear more than one hat, right, Nick?
Yep, I call that the McFarlane conundrum, based off of Todd McFarlane, creator of Spawn.
Yeah,
it's one of the things he constantly talks about on his reels and social media. He's like, I just want to be the guy that draws, but I do all this other stuff, and if I don't do that stuff, the ship sinks. So I fit it in where I can.
So just those listening at home, because I think one of the cool things about talking about comics is the art style, right? So each comic universe is going to have a coherent style, but just because I want to show you the kind of things that Jason is capable of, I went to his website, which has a sample of his portfolio. So like you're looking at on the screen, if you're checking it out. If not, you can go to his website. It's linked in the show notes. But like he's got this picture of Duat from Egyptian mythology, which I think is kind of cool. Then we've got, let me get to some of your other one, like the Predator stuff going on to sort of show the diversity of your talent. And I like the color schemes kind of subdued like this. And then who doesn't love RoboCop? So
ED249 or ED209 doesn't like RoboCop.
But how many seconds does he really have to comply?
209.
So one interesting point about one of the things you said about a book having a coherent art style. So when we did the very first issue, I was struggling to get enough to even do the main story done. And we made a decision pretty early on to include other artists because Dennis and Jason were making up ideas radically faster than I could possibly draw them. And one of the things with Lords of the Cosmos, and I think it was smart, and the older I get, the smarter it seems, we always made it to include others because we realized that if I was the only person doing the art, that would incredibly limit what we could do. And the very first issue had other artists, some probably much more talented than myself. And one of the things that I think is really strong with Lords of the Cosmos is there is my art in every issue, but we've had probably close to a dozen other artists draw these characters now. And we've got more people that have done work that hasn't even been published yet. And I think the fact that we have people with a diverse group of styles makes it better. And I go back to what I liked as a kid, where the Transformers I always thought was branded really well because no matter what the hell they were, if the good guys had this logo and the bad guys had that logo. So no matter what your art style is, if you work on Lords of the Cosmos, the villains have the hand in the hexagon and the heroes have a triangle with a planet and a sword in it. As long as they have that in it and we can identify those damn logos, then you can have a cartoonish style, a hyper-realistic style, Art Nouveau, Art Deco, it doesn't matter. And I think one of the strengths of Lords of the Cosmos is that we can have any kind of artist in there and it fits because we have character models and logos and that's it. Just to keep close and use those logos and we're good. And I think the more you include other people, you can have a bigger creative pool to back up your work, and you can do more versus less. So even though it'd be cool if I could draw every single thing, and again, Nick will, I'm sure, agree, there's only so much you can do. And if your ideas outstrip how fast you can draw, you better get more people and find a way to include them, because that will enable you to do more.
That's one of the problems that I've also encountered. As much as I would like to draw everything that comes across Apogee's desk, I don't have the time to do that because apparently I need food and sleep. So I do try and put, like you, I put my art in every issue that comes out, whether it's a cover or it's a little mini poster in the middle of the book, whatever it is. You know, I try to make sure that I still have that touch on the character.
Sure. So, I mean, like I said, so this issue, the other two main artists, because there's 3 stories in the new issue, they're both from Italy. They were guys, one guy I was a fan of on Instagram and one guy I was a fan of on Facebook. And they're both really good, and their styles are not like mine. So I look at it as just, you know, it's like Damascus steel. We can put in more styles and more types. I think it makes the book as a whole stronger over time to include more and more people. I have a story that is all done that was done during COVID, so it's getting a couple years old, by a friend of mine that does art like newspaper comic strips. And it looks like nothing we've put to print before. And I'll be excited to get that in a future issue as a standalone story. But again, if you allow the diverse visions of different artists, there are no limits, right? So it isn't like, well, you didn't draw it, so it's not, you know, we like the one kind of art, which is one of the reasons I like anthology books. You know, again, Heavy Metal 2000 AD, Tales from the Crypt, any of those things I've always enjoyed ever since I was little. So it's a format that I really like, and I kind of think it's underused. I wish there was more anthology style comics, but not as popular as perhaps they once were.
Yeah, they want the single issue floppies or graphic novels. But going back to your the artist that does the style in like old newsprint comics,
yes,
does he use the hexachrome dots and all that stuff too?
Yep.
Oh man, that's exciting. Now I love that style. That's one of those things that got me into comic books to begin with in the mid '80s, and then that just increased me buying stuff from the '70s and '60s and even further. But that hexachrome style, those dots, I just thought those were really cool. And now that you have those assets available in like some of these imaging software that most of us draw on now, I just think it's really cool. It just adds, I don't know, it's just like this little certain punch to it that just makes it look super cool.
It's so exotic now that it really pops, even though there was a time that's what everything was. So I get it. And like I said, I'm excited when we get that in the book. I don't know if it'll be in issue 6, but we might do an issue 0, so it might show up there. I don't know.
It's like giving a Walkman to like a Gen Alpha or a Gen Z. They're like, oh, what is this? And they're like completely enthralled with it. And they're like, oh my God, this is how that technology used to work? I'm like, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's exciting. You know, retro tech's cool.
So do any of those art styles cycle through? Are there trends by eras when it comes to comics, or is it just constantly evolving?
So if you want to put a big like eye in the sky of like 100 years of comics, yeah, there's definitely trends and styles. I'm not enough of a historian to really walk you through it really quick with all the changes and everything else, but yes, there most certainly are. I think along with a lot of other things, we're in an era now where it seems like everything's on the table, because to Nick's point, with some technology now, it's very easy to duplicate some of the tools of the past that might have been manual but are now digital. So whether it's cutting edge, you know, CGI art, or people doing things that are very old, we're almost in a time now where it's like everything could be a style. It's an era with everything. I don't know what the dominant style is now. There's some really talented individual comic book artists out there in the world. But, you know, for me, I just try to take inspiration from things that I've enjoyed as a reader. And my thought as a comic creator is to use the things that I like, but not be derivative. So like I love 2000 AD. I love the fact that it's a black and white anthology. So like that's part of this book's DNA. I love the Masters of the Universe genre. I would call it like sci-fi barbarians. And I think that's part of this project's DNA. So anyone that would read Lords of the Cosmos, just those two things, you would say, I kind of feel that in this book. But what I don't want you to do is be like, that guy looks just like Skeletor. You know what I mean? Where you're like, okay, like this is so derivative that it just feels like you're copying it. So I've had people say, this really makes me feel like Masters of the Universe. And I'm like, okay, that's good, because that's the flavor, but I don't want it to be like, okay, this is literally the same thing. Everything's the same. You have to be, it's like saying I like if you like the Dollar trilogy, right? Like I like the Dollar trilogy. You probably love Unforgiven. It has Clint Eastwood in it, and it's a great Western, but they're not the same, right? So you can say one's inspired by the other, but they're not the same movie. But they're both great examples of the Western genre. So to me, the things that I look to for Lords of the Cosmos is kind of his DNA for properties. Thundar the Barbarian from Ruby Spears Animation in the 80s. It was on NBC. I love that. Flash Gordon, which, the 30s comic strip, the 80s movie, and the 70s cartoon from Filmation. Thundercats, Masters of the Universe, right? To me, I would call those all like a subgenre, and I just call it sci-fi barbarians, where it's like, okay, so there's a futuristic world, there's technology, there's magic, and then there's kind of these characters that are kind of fisticuff sword types in it. They're the heroes, and all those properties kind of line up with that. And Thundar really leaned into the post-apocalyptic part of it, whereas He-Man hinted at a post-apocalyptic world, but it was kind of more of a robotic fantasy world. So again, I liked all those things. So to me, I view that as a genre no different than a Western or a gangster or whatever you want to call it. Right. So Lords of the Cosmos fits into that genre. The name is a nod to that Lords, Masters, Cosmos universe, right? So it's kind of like, okay, like I'm tracking this. I get what you're doing. It feels sort of the same, but it's not. So again, can we give nods to these things without being too derivative? I think you can, right? And I think, I like to give people the feels, but make them want to come around to figure out what's going to happen, right? Like I loved Cabin in the Woods when that came out, because it took a lot of those kind of beat to death tropes and it made the teenagers in the woods interesting, right? It tipped it on its head. And I still really appreciate that film because we knew it, but we didn't know it. And I think that's kind of what I want to do as a creator with a book like Lords of the Cosmos is pay homage, but don't be derivative.
Right. Yeah, Cabin in the Woods is one of my favorite horror movies, to be honest.
It's a great film. It's fun. It's
for the same reasons. It's you kind of thought how it was going to go, and then you saw how the tropes and how those tropes are being used to further the plot. I don't want to spoil it, even though that movie's been out forever. But
I mean, one of the problems I think with entertainment now is we've all gotten so damn smart and we've all consumed so much media. If you think about something like Blair Witch Project, where it freaked people out, right? Whatever year that came out, 99, 2000. Is it possible to make entertainment that really shocks and amazes people now? I think you could, but it's a lot harder. Yeah. We've seen too much. We know too much. We're getting too smart as viewers. So to really trick the audience, right, or the reader, it's damn hard, because readers and viewers are freaking smart, man. They've seen so much stuff that it's hard to really throw one past them. And when you do, it's great.
So if we go back to the franchise, the Lords of the Cosmos, how did you come up with the hand and the hexagon pattern for the bad guys and the sword and the globe for the good guys?
So I don't even remember at this point. I remember I was at, I think it was Wizard World Philadelphia in 2015 or 2016. And I just started saying, if I'm going to have these characters in this space, they've got to have logos. And I just started kind of throwing some ideas down. And I've always kind of thought the hand is a pretty creepy kind of logo. But then it's got like a side, like, so, and I forget, there's an actual name for it in like religion and mythology, where there's like a hand with an eye in it. and it's considered like a good thing. But when I did the Umex Disciples of Umex logo, it's a robotic eye, right? So it's kind of like, oh, like it's subverting something that's classic, like it's a sign of religion, friendship, antiquity. Well, now it's a machine, right? And I think that always kind of comes across as a little offensive to people. So it's like it's a subverted religious symbol that's cybernetic. So the main villain is kind of a trope of a lot of characters. He's a zombie, he's a cyborg, he's part, robotic. He's got his left arm is tentacles that he destroys stuff with. So he's kind of the over leader of the bad guys. So that's his symbol. And then the good guys, it was trying to make something that was kind of generically heroic. So it was a planet with a triangle, which I've always kind of viewed a triangle as kind of, three things, the triumvirate. There's kind of some general good vibes around it, where I don't know why hexagons always seem more aggressive to me. Maybe it's because it's got more corners. So the bad guys got a hexagon. The good guys got a triangle. With a planet with rings around. I always thought Saturn looked kind of cool and interesting. And then we used some warmer colors, some blues and greens, or to do the planet logo, and then the hand logo is red. I came up with them years ago, and we've just rolled with them, and that's what they are now. And it's funny. So my anchors have digital files. They don't even draw it anymore. They just put it in when they do my artwork. And, the artists that work for us, they get, this is what the logos are, and they do their own versions of them. We've had artists that have worked them into buildings and vehicles and the issues and stuff like that. And it's fun. And the more we use it, the more it becomes part of the lore and part of the mythology for the characters. Can't really say I put a whole lot of thought into them, but one seems a little more friendly than the other. Like, it's friendly but militaristic, and the other one just kind of seems more religious culty to me, which is kind of the gist,
So this is like, I know there's like two geometry teachers listening, and they're like, oh my goodness, don't talk about shapes that way. And when you talked about one seem friendlier, I could just see now like the math teachers like going in revolt. So if you do, and you're that one person, like, his contact information is in there, send the hate mail to him. From the math cult.
Where's the bad one, Jason?
So okay,
it's the hexagon.
So
Everybody knows that.
That's the hard part with logos, though, because on the one hand, you want it to be simple enough that it sticks out, right? Like, you don't want it to be too complex that people can't instantly recognize it. You want it simple enough if you make merch like T-shirts, mugs, coffee cup, whatever. You want to be able to put it on there. But all the really simple stuff, someone's already used before, and you don't want to be like so derivative that you're stealing from someone either. So I think you balance the two pretty well.
There was a video game that I've played for years, and I have it on Steam. It's one of the few games that I play. I love the old Command and Conquer games, and I thought those had a very Transformers feel, where the bad guys had kind of a modified triangle with a scorpion tail, and then the good guys had like a circle with kind of a stylish eagle, and that game always struck a chord with me. So there's a little bit of Command and Conquer DNA in these logos, and the characters are all very branded. You can draw whatever you want in Lords of the Cosmos, but they got to be on a side. They got to have their logo. So very Command and Conquer, very G.I. Joe, very Transformers. I like that. So, I mean, one of the things that we do for each issue, it's been tradition now, is every issue has a toy. Because I'm not going to ask you guys how old you are, but I think I'm getting the cues. You guys are a certain age that you probably remember when your parents took you to places like KB and Kmart, and you went to go look
Toys
at
R Us.
Toys R Us, the blister packs on the shelf. And do you remember, especially you guys, military veterans, buying your G.I. Joe, and they'd have the little cardboard thing on the back?
Yes.
All right. So each issue of Lords of the Cosmos, on the back of the comic and the inside back cover are the front and backs of a toy blister pack. So my friend Eric in Philadelphia, every issue builds a toy. We photograph it. We send it to my friend Jared that lives in Scranton. And then he designs the toy photograph into a blister pack on the back. And then the inside back cover has a description of the character plus a stat chart.
Oh, nice. That's cool.
Which again is one of those fun little nods in every issue of Lords of the Cosmos, that it's like, we're feeling that you like these branded toys. There's good guys and there's bad guys, and they've got cards. And we've had people that have seen that. They're like, dude, this is like, I was really into those things. And I was like, me too, right?
The
So I'm sorry, JR, go ahead.
No, I was just say I've seen people do that, like when you make the nod to the past, like where they'll put advertisements in the back of like comics, or in my case, I've seen it on the e-zine or game content because I've written for Fading Goat Games. Wrote short stories for the e-zine, and I see that in there, and I like it when you see that. You've got to be careful though. So, for instance, I did one of my covers. I always go for retro for my anthology covers that I host, and I had one where it had like that 25-cent Kmart, but it's like not Kmart because that'll get you sued, but it kind of, that's the point. And the 25-cent little sticker, and Amazon's like, no, you can't do that because people might actually think it's 25 cents. And I'm like, come on, they have to know this is like a knockoff, right? Like we're playing to the nostalgia crowd, right? So it's fun on the one hand to do it. On the other, like sometimes the powers that be that host the products we sell can get really stupid about getting in the way of that.
That's never happened to me, and I think we actually have little phony price tags in the back of Lords of the Cosmos. So I'll be ready for the cease and desist from Jeff Bezos. Like, sorry, Jason, your Comex action figure can't have that $3.99 S-Mart sticker on the back.
Yeah, that's what it was. S-Mart. You're right. That's what they used on ours. I think that's what everyone uses for the generic Kmart.
So the new issue has Zemba, the lady with the gun and the whip. This issue, she is our featured action figure on the back, and my sculptor is doing a limited edition of 5. So 5 backers will be able to buy their own Zemba action figures with a whip and pistol.
Will they be able to buy potentially at a lower tier where they can buy like the STL file and print it themselves?
No, he actually sculpts them from parts. It's not even a print.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so you would actually have to have somebody with the machine to scan those for the STL file. And I don't know how common those are.
He actually made like little vinyl outfits, like a doll.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, no, it's like, yeah, let me roll it back, right? This isn't like no, there's no files to send. He took a Barbie and modded it to build it with custom clothing and custom handmade weapons. And this dude, that's what he does. And,
that is awesome.
He's built ones for us in the past out of clay and like wood.
Oh, wow.
Right, yeah. So there's no files to scan or anything like that. That would be cool, but no, he goes hardcore analog. Clay.
There's
plastic.
room in the market for that. I love that stuff.
There's a lot of them. Well, not a lot of them. There's a few good ones out there that still do traditional sculpting for figures. And
so
stuff.
He's doing 5 traditional sculpts.
Nice.
Wow.
So you mentioned the 2 factions that is one of the requirements for your franchise. Yep. Is there any plans you think where you could foresee adding new factions, splinter groups, or whatever?
Yes. When we complete the story, right? So if you look at Lords of the Cosmos, right? We play it straight like it's a toy series in a franchise from the past. And in issue 4, we had a letters page where readers lashed out about the property in the 80s and 90s. And like one person wrote a letter about the 90s live action movie that went south, and it was kind of a scream. And so we kind of play it to that angle too. Like it was a big property that we brought back, which is fun. And if you think about how these properties go and how they went in the past, they always want to milk them for more. So I could totally see us, if we hit a certain point, we want to do like the next phase of Lords of the Cosmos. Maybe there is a 3rd faction because now there's like new toys, right? Like a He-Man and Skeletor, they had the Snake People, right?
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe there would be a 3rd faction in Lords of the Cosmos. Maybe they leave the planet in the future and find like a robot faction or something of that nature. But we haven't gotten that far yet. But I like that. I like that, JR. You're pushing me, dude. I like it.
So obviously we've talked about the property. But then now the important part, because this is a Kickstarter, right? So we're going to be airing this the day the Kickstarter goes live.
Yes.
Obviously, you have to make your minimum backing to get it funded. I'm going to assume that you do that because this sounds pretty cool. So what are the stretch goals and what are the like tiers? Can people buy the back issues? Can they get physical versus PDF copies? Like what are you offering for sale?
So I've been doing Kickstarters now for 12 years. The first one I did was in 2012. I think this is my 13th crowdfunding project for comics and coloring books, because I did some coloring books once. I've gotten pretty darn smart, JR. And I will tell you this. I've been working on this Kickstarter with some excellent help. Big shout out to my friend Tara Frick, who did all the graphics for the project. She's outstanding, and it wouldn't be as great as it is without her help. Thanks, Tara. This Kickstarter is big, man. It's got everything. It's got 99 add-ons and something like 16 tiers.
Holy crap, that's a lot.
So pretty much anything you want, anything at all. It's the new book. It's PDF. It's the back issues. It's all the issues. It's T-shirts. It's enamel pins. It's mouse pads. It's every piece of original art in the book, which is absurd. Like everything you can get. Variant covers, sketch covers, nude covers, right? It's everything. In the past, it was very limiting because Kickstarter was like you just could have your tiers. So it was like, here's a T-shirt and a sketch cover. Now it's like you can get 2 enamel pins, some stickers, a bookmark, a mouse pad, all the covers, and a piece of original art. You can make up your own tier, and you can pick the stuff you want. So everything you just said you can have. You can have it digital. You can have it in print, new covers, old covers, variant covers, everything.
So some of the companies will do, like, if you pay a certain tier, you can get like a cameo of a character in the. So it's easier to do in print, like writing novels and stuff, where you can add characters. Do you guys add any tiers where self inserts at some level, or red shirt status or whatever?
So I did it. I don't think I'm going to do it again because shame on me. The characters, the people that did that, and I think issue 2. Are finally showing up in issue 5, and I'm so glad for all your patience. We finally got there. So some of these people, they paid money years ago now. It's almost like it's finally paying off. And I have to go look to see when we collected that money. And I thought it was really cool at the time, but I was like, this is a massive freaking responsibility. So that I would not do again. But they are in this issue. I think there's like 8 people that paid issues ago to be in this. So Jason keeps his promises, right? And you will be in Lords of the Cosmos if you paid for it. So that answers one of your questions. And I forgot to answer your other question. I think I have 5 stretch goals for this book. So there's stickers of the characters as chibi, some of the characters. There's anime versions of some of the characters as stickers at a certain stretch goal. And then there is a special set of 1980s retro covers for all the books that becomes available as another stretch goal. So there's 5 of them in total, and I'd be lying if I said I could remember which one was which, but we've got all the graphics ready to go. And the stretch goals go up to something like $20,000. So we'll see how high we can push it. But yeah, stretch goals, characters in the book from backers. Yeah, JR, it's been crazy, dude.
So is there any plans to try to cross mediums? Like, I don't know, I've seen some of the comic style stories being written as novels and short stories that do well. I think CC Akeke does superhero fiction that way. Do you think at any point in time you might branch out with this property and tell other stories in other mediums, or are you going to stick to comics, you think?
The medium that Lords of the Cosmos would be the best in that isn't comics and maybe better than comics would be if it was an animated series of shorts.
Yeah,
preferably anime.
Why anime?
I think Lords of the Cosmos would lend itself to that. It would be just like a fish going in water. That is well beyond my pay grade. But if anyone ever said we want to license this to make it into a cartoon, I think it would just people would say, yeah, this is a great fit for an original cartoon that is different, but I like it a lot and it gathers my attention. So novel, don't know. It should be cool to read, but to me, Lords of the Cosmos is a lot of visual punch. And
okay.
I think that, if it was a series of animated shorts, it would be outstanding.
Yeah, it'd be hard to keep the retro vibe in like print story style. It's always cool to see properties that branch out, that start on one medium and they can go kind of multifaceted.
The dollar amount to go from a comic to animation is catastrophic. So, I mean, like it's well beyond, schleps like me to go out and raise some coin to do it. But I believe, and I'm going to get Nick's, I'm going to throw a take out there and I'm curious what Nick thinks about it. So this is my take on why I make comics. I make comics because I love to make comics and I love to tell stories. If it was just for me in a vacuum, I would just enjoy Lords of the Cosmos by myself because I really do enjoy it. And it's a lot of fun to me to make. and I get a blast out of reading it, even as a creator. If that's all it ever is, and it's just me enjoying it with a few friends, then ultimately I would still be happy with that because I honestly enjoy it. If it became something bigger and became an animated show or something of that nature, that would be awesome. But I never went into it expecting that. And I think if that's your goal, to build clout or to get some radical success, is like that's what you are shooting for, you'll probably be disappointed because that's pretty unrealistic. I enjoy playing catch with my kids with a football in the backyard. It's fun because that is what it is. I'm not pining because I'm not playing in the NFL. Although there are some quarterbacks in the league right now that I would work for half the pay and probably do just as bad as they are these days. No offense to my Giants and Panthers fans, but there's some pretty bad quarterbacks in the league right now. But, that's why I make comics, and I make Lords of the Cosmos because I really love it. And I love having chats like this talking about my passion for my own property because I think it's really freaking cool. And I got to love it if I want other people to love it. And I get a gas when I've read it too many times because I'm editing it and everything else. But it would be awesome to see it go beyond me to a different medium and to have, some money put into it beyond anything I could do to say this is going to be a series of 10, 30-minute animated shorts that we're going to bring this world to life and we're really going to kick it into another gear. That would be great. But if that doesn't happen, that's cool too. No different than playing catch with my kids. It's its own reward. If we become professional athletes, that would be great, but we probably aren't. But we can still have fun. I'm going to turn it over to Nick because I think that was that's kind of a deep, you guys asked my religion about coffee and science fiction. There's my, why do you do this? Nick, why do you make your comic?
Nick, you're muted. You're saying something purely profound, I am sure, but you're muted.
Yeah, you didn't need to go that long into it. It's like, as soon as you said you're muted, I was like, all right, click. But no, that's exactly the same reason I make comics. I got character kid. I love the world that I created for him. I love telling the story, and if I sell like one comic book at a convention, I feel like John Grisham, it just, I get super stoked, get super pumped about it. Would it be great if it became a feature film or that'd be great. If it was that'd be really cool. But that's not what I didn't set out to, chase out or get up there into the upper echelons or be the next big thing. I had a story to tell, and I thought I have this really cool character, and I want to share it with the world. And if people like it, awesome. If they don't like it, well, that's cool too. So
that's probably common for most comic people because the running joke is, how do you make millions as a comic book artist? Start with billions, because it's a lot of times you don't always make your money back, at least in that style. But so one of the things I didn't think to ask, Jason, and you told us the kind of comics you like. How did you get into going from like, I just enjoy this stuff as a consumer to I want to make the product as a creative? Like, where did that shift for you happen? Were you always drawing something or doodling, or how did that start for you?
Yeah, so I've always liked to draw. When I was in elementary school, I think even in kindergarten, I got put in private art classes outside of school because I really liked to do it. That was my thing. I think I do have some natural talent to do it. I think that I learned a lot through those lessons as a kid. And then when I was in high school, I got put into a scholarship art program for a summer, which was called the Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts for Gifted Artistic Kids, which is pretty wild. Some of the people that were there, some of them are probably more talented than me. One of the guys that, I feel embarrassed. There's a guy that works for Marvel now that was there with me. And now I can't think of his name because I'm spacing on it because I'm in an interview. I'll remember it when we get off. But
that's the way it works.
Yeah, right. So there's some really talented people that were there, and like I said, some probably better than me. So when I got to the point where I was going to get out of high school, there was a lot of soul searching of like, do I go to art school or do I go to like some kind of more traditional school? And I really had a lot of concerns, you know, as a kid, even about how viable is art as a job and making money and everything else. And I kind of went for more of a conservative degree, and I got a degree in business, right? So I didn't take that time in college in my post-secondary or, you know, secondary education or whatever you call college, right, to do art. So I took a couple art classes in college, but when I was in college, I was making t-shirt designs and stuff like that, and freelance art, designing tattoos and stuff for people. And then, you know, after college for a couple years, I didn't really do anything. I just kind of got into work and just kind of being a regular civilian muggle, whatever. And then it was about 13, 14 years ago where I was like, you know, I kind of felt that creative bug that, like, why wasn't I doing stuff? And I kind of was a little bit disappointed with myself. I had a couple conversations with some fellow creatives that were kind of expressing a disappointment that I hadn't really pursued. You know, you're doing a lot of stuff for, like, you know, work and jobs and stuff, but where did all that creativity go? And I kind of picked it back up in my 30s and said, you know, I'm going to start making books because that's kind of what I want to do. And the weird part about it is now is that I do see a lot of my friends that do art for a living. There's a lot of suffering and there's a lot of hardship in that space, which isn't to say there aren't some people that are really successful, but purely creative jobs, I think, are under a lot of attack from things like AI and just a general devaluation in prices, which I think is very negative to, you know, whether it's musicians, playwrights, writers, or artists. And, you know, I don't need any of this to make a living because I have my regular job. I work full-time in commercial heating and cooling sales. So I'm in the HVAC industry. That's my job, right? So the weird thing is there was a time that I wish I would have been doing art full-time, but now that I do it as kind of like a thing that I really enjoy, that it still makes money, but it's not, I'm not depending on it to pay the bills, that my art can kind of run free. I can do things like Lords of the Cosmos, which admittedly isn't very profitable, right? It's not some big gainer because people just want fan art. Could you draw Batman? Could you draw Boba Fett? That's what they really want. And Nick knows, you try to pitch your own book. It's, well, I don't know that. You know, do you have Groot? You know, do you have Black Panther? He's popular. And so because I don't depend on it for a living, I can let Lords of the Cosmos run free, almost like a sanctuary. So it is very interesting to me, you know, in my 40s, that I don't know that I would have planned for my art life to go the way it did, but I'm at peace with it and I'm happy with it. It works. And there's times where I wish it could have been different or maybe played out a different way. But that's life. Right?
It is.
Okay, well, now that we've sufficiently covered the topic, is there anything about Lords of the Cosmos that we didn't cover that you think they need to know about this Kickstarter and the property? I think we've been pretty thorough.
I think we really have. I mean, look, the stuff that I said, either it's going to hit home or you're like, damn, like that guy's saying a lot of stuff that really appeals to me, or you're just going to say the bullshit. I don't like any of this stuff. I'm not interested in it. And that's cool. So I think my pitch is either going to push you away or make you say, I'm really curious. I said the only other thing that's important beyond the content and everything else is two things. I take care of my backers. All my projects have been completed and I fulfill things on time. I do not play around with the responsibility and people give me money. So when you back one of my projects, you will get taken care of in a timely, professional manner, and you'll get what you paid for. And I want you to walk away feeling that I've exceeded your expectations. That's number one. And number two, and I built it into the campaign with the credits, is that one of the things that I've been very unhappy with the last couple years is seeing that people doing projects where people aren't getting paid that worked on books, backers not getting rewards, and I'm really not happy with AI. So one of the things, I kind of felt like a politician. I made a thing for this campaign that you'll see tomorrow when it goes, or today when it goes live, right, on the 10th. It's called The Pledge, right? And the pledge is this book didn't have AI. This book paid all the people that needed to get paid that worked on the book. And the book's done, and the backers are going to get what their product is. And I think it's sad that you've got to lay that out. But I want people to know that this is my position as a creator, that I think those things now have to be spelled out. And if you're going to come at me and say, well, I want AI in my books and I think it's wrong, you don't have it. Well, then I guess we can just disagree, right? I don't think you're correct. And I don't like to see backers get shafted by creators. And there's been some pretty high profile creators shafting the Joes and Janes paying for their books. And I also don't like seeing people that worked on books and I did a cover, I did coloring or whatever. I didn't get paid. And this guy made $8,000, $10,000, $20,000. So I think those are very important. So whether you like my content or not, I think those are two very important things. Is I have my pledge, and again, which is part of the pledge, I take care of my backers. You back one of my projects, you're going to get what you asked for, and you're going to get good product, great product. So I think that's key. Those would be the last things I would say about Lords of the Cosmos and why you should consider backing it.
Yeah, it is a shame that you have to say that kind of stuff, because at one point in time, the understanding was, as a man, the only thing, man being generic for any person, the only thing you really have is the value of your name and your integrity. And that used to mean something. And I don't know that it does as much anymore. And that is kind of a sad thing. But we're going to end on a happy note. So this is the part where I remind you to please be kind and speak your mind on the reviewing platforms. Your reviews help the right readers find the right projects. And if you're sick of the doom and the gloom and you want to support an independent creator who pays the people that work for him and didn't generate it with a computer, well, with an AI program, then be sure to do that in the comment section. It does help the right readers find the right products. I know Kickstarters, you can leave reviews there. If you buy it on Etsy, they let you buy reviews there. All those will be in the show notes. If nothing else, you can go over to his website, which is, again, linked in the show notes. And because it's a WordPress, you can comment on his posts and you can say, hey, I backed this, whatever. I absolutely loved it. And if that's the only place you can find to leave a review, do it. And if you're so inclined, start a website, start a YouTube channel, start a podcast where we review all the comics that you love. And you'll have people beating down your door to give you free stuff so you can review their product too. So, I mean, it's really, if you're passionate about these things as a consumer, help feed the industry by supporting it, even if it's just with word of mouth. I think people forget or don't realize sometimes that if you don't have a lot of money to throw thousands of dollars at the creator you like, simply sharing it with your friends can go a long way.
Sharing is caring.
Absolutely. All right. Jason, where can listeners find you online if they want to track you down? Obviously, we're linking to the Kickstarter and your social medias, but where are you most active as a creator?
So I bounce around between Twitter and Instagram, which I'm just at Lenox Artist, right there, Lenox Artist. And then I'm on Facebook at Jason Lenox Illustrator on Facebook, or you can just find me and friend me on there. And I post a lot of jokes and memes, and it's a lot of stuff about geese. So a lot of people are like, you've been posting geese for years, because I found a couple feeds that put really humorous goose stuff, and I'm a fan. So if you want to see geese, find me on Facebook. Be my friend. You'll see some geese.
If you want funny things to share, they get people talking. Brain Damage Studios has a line where all they post is like, they'll do like a Doritos bag, but they'll come up with like these off the wall flavors like pumpkin spice or tuna fish casserole Doritos, or they'll do it with Cokes and Twinkies and like dill pickle Dr. Pepper. You get all kinds of funny emails from people that are like, please stop. But then they keep looking and they keep interacting. It's hilarious. And so now our listeners try to outdo me by finding even more obscure and heinous culinary atrocities. So anyway, with that out of the way, you can find us. Yeah, we didn't break the law, honest officer. You can find us on our Linktree, linktr.ee, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast. Again, Linktree/Blasters and Blades Podcast, where we link to all the things, the BitChutes, the Rumbles, the YouTubes, the TikToks, the Twitters. We have our Blasters and Blades Facebook group and Facebook page, and our email, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. Again, blastersandbladespodcast@gmail.com. For professional purposes only, people. Keep the shenanigans over at Madam Stabby Stabs, Instagram, Twitter, and email. We do have an episode coming up with proof of life that Stabby is real. We promise that Nick hasn't buried her in the back 40 acres, whatever he's got on that mountain he bought, allegedly. So, send the shenanigans her way. We have our website linked on the Linktree. It's a bunch of gobbledygook, but it's on Spotify. If you click the link, you could support the show for as little as 99 cents a month. You can help keep the lights on. These episodes aren't free to produce, and we appreciate your patronage. Or you could support the show more directly at buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Again, buymeacoffee.com/author J.R. Handley. Be sure to put in the comment sections for the podcast, and I promise I will keep my co-hosts duly caffeinated. They will drink that pumpkin spice latte if I have to shove it down their throats. Okay, I need a moment. Or Or if you don't want to do something that feels a little too much like charity, paying us for our time, you could help us by going to Coffee Brand Coffee. Links in the show note. Podcast Grunts is the code. You get 10% off. We get a kickback. You support an American company, roasted in America. This is not a drop shipping operation. They actually buy the beans, roast them here in the U.S., ship them in the U.S. They hire American citizens. This isn't robotics and under the counter kind of nonsense. This is a legitimate above board company, which is why Nick and I like doing business with them. We did break the golden rule though, Nick. They say you're not supposed to use your own product, and Stabby and I maybe went a little bit nuts buying stuff. Theoretically.
Never get high on your own supply unless it's
they didn't tell me that before we got the discount code, and I'm like, oh, I get discount too. So maybe I have a problem and I should start a self-help group. I don't know. Anyway, but what did you tell me?
Program for coffee.
Yeah, 12 steps are for losers who quit. We're not quitters. Anyway, seriously, if you actually have problems with substances, we're just making jokes. Do the therapy. But anyway, thank you for spending some of your precious time with us. For my crazy co-host, I am J.R. Handley, and this was the Blasters and Blades podcast. We'll be back next week at the same time, where we'll indulge our love of nerd culture, cheesy jokes, and all things that go boom. Wait a minute, Nick. We just lied because this is a bonus episode on a Tuesday. So while the next episode will have things that go boom, this is not our normal airing time because, like I said, we love to support the Kickstarters and help the comic community, and that seems to be where all of your people go, Nick. So they come here for their Kickstarter entries. And I love doing them. They're fun. I see all kinds of crazy art. And as a colorblind person, sometimes I can actually see the images and I dig it.
Well, this one's in black and white, so you're in.
I'm in, dude. So I'm like, grayscale, sign me up. So,
I create crazy colors in my comics just to mess with you. So
I know you do. And then sometimes people send me stuff just to mess with me. Like, there's a picture in here, and sometimes it really is, and I'm colorblind, I just don't see it. And sometimes it really is just a white square, and they're lying to me. I'm looking at you, Richard. You know what you did. Anyway, with that, thanks for coming on, Jason. This was a lot of fun. You'll have to come back for your next project, or if you just want to, shoot the breeze about all things comics. We don't do enough comic book episodes. With Nick on, we should probably do more of those.
I'm there for it. Just let me know. I'd love to come back on. You guys were delightful. Thank you for having me.
This was a lot of fun. You were a lot of fun. So with that, I'm going to hit the end button so I can get this up and we can pimp your stuff. Boom. Wait for it, Nick.